Health Rights, Workgroup for People's Health and Rights. Visit us at healthrights.org.
David Werner has traveled extensively, inspiring and mentoring those who love and care for children with disabilities. His lectures, books, and workshops are changing the way we view such individuals and how they view themselves. I had the opportunity to observe one such event. The impact of this 4-day workshop will have lifelong consequences for all who participated. I met David Werner in 1968 when I was a student at Pacific High School. I attended a field trip where he took a few students to Sinaloa, Mexico to build a clinic. I was just as impressed then as I am to this very day, 40 years later, at his uncanny ability to organize, inspire, and motivate large groups of people, one person at a time. Work begins the moment we arrive in Lima. To get a workshop off the ground and completed in just 4 days, there's a tremendous amount of preparation involved, including arranging for transportation and home visits, making supplies available for designing and making assistive devices, and ensuring that everyone involved has realistic expectations and are aware of the intense and time-sensitive nature of the workshop.
Well, we start off this afternoon, I hope, by visiting some of the children that we'll be including in the workshops. And deciding which of them we want to include and which are not as appropriate.
As we set off, the discrepancy between the more affluent areas of Lima, where there is wheelchair access and public fitness stations, and the surrounding areas where millions of inhabitants live was obvious. Many have been forced from their rural homes to live in poverty in shanty towns on the steep hillsides that are a challenge for the able-bodied to navigate. Many people with disabilities have become prisoners in their own homes. We visited the homes of 8 children, and the first child we visited with was Carlos. Carlos lives with his elderly father on the 3rd floor up a narrow, dark walkway without water or electricity, and when it rains they must place tarps over themselves to stay dry in bed. His mother died when he was a baby, and he's been lovingly cared for by his father. His situation is complex. He has frequent seizures and has never been on medication. He is unaware of his surroundings. There's never enough to eat. And his father cannot easily take him to the streets where he works as a street vendor selling fried potatoes and eggs. He has a donated wheelchair that primarily serves as a coat rack, since it's too heavy to easily move from the house, and it does not accommodate Carlos's writhing body. As a result, Carlos often stays home, padlocked in a small room, while his father works. Although we will visit 8 children, we will focus on Daniel. Daniel is a very bright and artistic child, and he would really like to learn to become more independent. He has difficulty transferring from one seat to another, and he's invented ways of getting around on his own, but he'd really like to do more for himself. He's outgrown his well-worn wooden chair. His current wheelchair is not designed for Daniel to operate by himself. He really needs to be pushed by someone else. David examines him and is very excited to discover that he should have enough upper body control and strength to independently use a wheelchair that's designed by placing the large wheels in front and adapting the chair for his specific needs. Together, they discuss this option, and they look at David's book, Nothing About Us Without Us, to demonstrate this concept. Daniel is also asked if he would like to draw his own design for an assistive device to work on during the workshop, and to think about how he would like to improve his life and what it would take to do so. We travel many miles over the course of a day and a half to find the appropriate children. The next child we visited was Luis Octavio. Luis Octavio is a bright, cheerful, patient child who's surrounded by a very large, supportive extended family. He has a difficult time communicating, and he would like to be able to use a computer. He shows us how he is able to type on a keyboard. Although it took him several minutes to press one key, he remains unfazed and is proud when he is successful. He seems trapped in a body that's unable to express his desires and commands. David evaluates his fine motor skills. He inquires about how his life can be improved and makes some suggestions. Although he lacks fine motor coordination and cannot draw or feed himself, there are several assistive devices that may be able to help Luis become more independent and productive. We then visited with Jose and his mother. Jose's situation is very challenging. He sits in an awkward position and his body is very rigid, so it's hard to keep him in a seat. He also has difficulty eating and breathing. His doctor, Dr. John Oliveira, has a custom-designed wheelchair on order. David and Dr. Oliveira note that some positions make it easier for Jose to breathe than others due to lack of flexibility and contractures, and it's difficult to find the appropriate positions for Jose to be comfortable and safe. When his mother was asked to think about improvements she would like for Jose or for herself, she noted that when the family sits around the table, neither she nor Jose ever face the family. Some simple adaptations to the table or wheelchair would help. David discussed how creating a simple custom-made adjustable chair insert in the workshop would enable his mother to easily experiment with various positions to meet Jose's needs.
Con un palo que como va a estar ajustable a diferentes alturas, usted mismo puede ir experimentando con él al ángulo que se relaja mejor para comer mejor.
Finding the appropriate children for the workshop is more difficult than it appears. We now meet with Max and his family. Max's body is in constant motion. He seems to have more control over the left side of his body than the right. His entire family is very involved in his care and finds great joy in sharing in his achievements. He is intelligent and artistic. He shared some of his art projects with us. And he shows us how he can read and write with great effort by pointing to words and numbers. He can hold a pen, but he's unable to control where the pen lands on the paper.
Eso, muy bien. Justamente,
bueno.
Max.
No, sí.
A ver, pero sí sabe todo, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Everyone is involved in the discussion about ideas to make his life easier and to allow him to communicate more effectively. One such idea is to build a plastic guide with large holes that can be placed over a computer keyboard. That way, Max would be able to more easily touch the key he intends to touch. David mentions the book My Left Foot, the story of Christy Brown, who was born with cerebral palsy and learned to paint and write with his only controllable limb, his left foot. Several members of Max's family plan to attend the workshop, including his young cousin, John Carlos. They are all thinking of ideas that will help him live a more fulfilling life. The next child we visited with was Jorge. Jorge is very dependent on his mother to provide for most of his activities, and he'll soon be too heavy for his mother to safely lift. He has a beautiful therapeutic seat that was custom made by his uncle, an inventor. It is a brilliant adaptation of an office chair, and although it fits him well, he cannot move about on his own. He prefers to sit in a very large wheelchair, which has a cushion to accommodate his deformity. This pushes his body forward, making it more difficult for him to reach the handrails. This sedentary situation contributes to Jorge being overweight, and he would like a chair that would enable him to have greater independence, and his family would like to have some sort of assistive device that would provide support for him to sit up straighter. After evaluating Jorge's coordination and upper body strength, David describes a wheelchair design that looks like a tricycle that he would be able to operate on his own. Everyone is encouraged to think of new ideas of how to improve Jorge's life, and his uncle is invited to volunteer at the workshop. The next child we visited was Jackie. Jackie cannot visually track moving objects, but her mom believes that she can see the color red, and she appears to be aware of her doll. She spends most of her day strapped in a chair, and her splints are no longer useful.
No. Pero se fijan los...
Sí, ella trata de, cuando así canta, trata de buscar, o sea.
David suggests creating various assistive devices, including something that will provide sensory stimulation so that Jackie may eventually learn to use her hands.
Para que empieza a fijar más con los ojos y con campa. No sé si day after tomorrow and the following day we'll have a so-called encuentro, a sort of a seminar about community-based rehab, where I'll be presenting some ideas, and other people with experience in CBR, community-based rehab, will present also.
Please. I'm a co-worker for CBM here in Peru, and my role is to advise on CBR projects and to start up a new project.
Gona also lectures. She uses elegantly simple teaching tools, audience participation, and role-playing, using examples that everyone can relate to. Madesa
emphasizes that all children are protected under the law and have a right to an education in Peru, and the importance of self-advocacy.
Todos los reglamentos, que valga la redundancia, eso es, la ley está allí para que se cumpla.
Dr. Oliveira is both a physician and a wheelchair designer, and is a physician for some of the children who will be participating in the workshop.
David discusses the importance of identifying a child's specific needs and then to customize assistive devices with realistic and affordable solutions. In this case, a doctor prescribed a plastic toy for Marcella to stimulate hand-eye coordination, which the family could not afford, and the father came up with the idea to make one out of sticks that could be mounted directly into the dirt floor, and then went on to adapt other toys made out of local resources. Once he understood the goal of the therapy, he was able to design and create assistive devices at little or no cost.
Se ven las ventajas, igual como las desventajas en la situación más humilde.